Hello everyone, Nordic Beast here, and welcome back to the Shipyard. So I figured I'd show you guys some things I've been working on, as well as a collaborative build, and a suggestive design change, and a weird thing I happened to stumble upon. So, we'll start at this end. This here, I have named the fifth lifter, because me and Fifthwom built this together. It started off as these three large cargo containers, an oxygen generator, an oxygen tank, and a reactor, and built it into this big transatmospheric transport. It's very hard to get these to actually work. By the way, I'm sorry if you hear my fan in the background. It is very hot in my office today. I had to close my door because I've got kids running around my house being crazy. I've got neighbors shooting off fireworks, so I'm sorry if there's loud stuff in the background. I apologize. But anyway, he has been wanting a transatmospheric transport like this for a while, and he had built one that could carry some cargo, but it also required hydrogen. So essentially, we over-engineered this bitch to make sure it works. I think it's a little on the ugly side for something that I've been a part of design-wise, but when you're trying to get something like this to work, I think aesthetics can go ahead and take a back seat overall, because then you're just adding more and more weight to get the look that you want, and I mean, it's a transport anyway. So the idea is well, essentially after we built, or after, we started off with those parts, he was like, oh, I haven't touched this in a couple of days, I don't know where I want to go. So I just started slapping parts on. I put the 6 large atmospheric thrusters on, and then made the wings, and we went from there. I kept just adding and adding, and Fifth kept saying, well, what about this? What about this? And we'd change and adjust, and he'd move things around, and he got the majority of the internal systems working. He's actually really good at all the conveyed internal systems of a ship. In fact, we had a hell of a time getting these dual cockpits conveyed, but we ended up coming up with the atmospheric, or the oxygen generator right here, and linking it in. So we tried several different designs for that to get it to work. And originally I had one large ion thruster under there, and then we split it off into 2, and it's actually lighter this way. I'm not quite sure why, because I had 2 more of these atmospheric thrusters down here. Removed those, put the ion thrusters in there, and they're actually significantly lighter. So last bit was the landing gear here. I know it's kind of ugly, but I'm quite proud of it. I've noticed with small ships, you really need to distribute the weight across the larger area. So that's why I went with like these double landing gear. I just got the 1 in the nose, but then I also have 2 back here. So it's 7 landing gear, just to make sure it's not crushing itself as it lands with heavy payload. It flies amazingly well. So the way now, this one here is actually mine. Like I said, I named it the fifth lifter. But when we finished, I hadn't finished the design yet, and just kind of let him to his own devices, so his version might be a bit different. I added these, my little star symbols I tend to put on there, and of course the coloration, as well as I added a couple extra atmospheric thrusters on the top for the sides, because it was swaying a bit, and you can tilt, but I thought it would be a little bit better just to add the extra thrusters. Now I set up the front cockpit as the pilot, and the back cockpit as the gunner, and you could just also have them just be a passenger, and just run it on automatic if you wanted. It's all up to you. But that's just how I set up the controls, and I really enjoyed this thing. This thing flies quite well, as a transatmospheric ship should. I mean, that's the thing. When it comes to transports, when they're empty, they should fly like a fighter. If they do, then A, they're going to be able to exit the atmosphere, and B, they're going to be able to carry a lot of cargo. So, and that's the reason for 8 ion thrusters in the back, just to make sure this thing breaks atmo with payload. Now, and that's also for the 6 atmospheric thrusters on bottom. You want to make sure this thing can actually get out of the atmosphere and be able to lift with all that cargo. So we haven't actually tested how much it can lift yet, but I'm guessing it's going to be pretty significant. Because, I mean, again, this thing flies like one of my fighters would. Now, in space, its maneuvering capability isn't as good. You know, the ion thrusters aren't nearly as powerful. Alright, come on. Yeah, even with the two small atmospheric thrusters on either side, you can still tell it just slides everywhere. Come on. I just want to park you. There we go. Thing of beauty. Boop. Alright. Okay, so next up are these two. Technically three, but I'll get into that. As you see, they're very similar, but they were completely different concepts. Originally, I started with this design here, and basically I wanted a shuttle with an internal troop carrying capacity. So I built the basic shape to be able to hold all the seats with the batteries and everything, and I went from there. After doing that, I decided, hey, I want cargo capacity, so I put in cargo containers. Here, come outside and show. You can see them all underneath. And then, as I kept building and designing and getting this thing to work, I decided, hey, I want this thing to be able to fly on a moon. So I added all these extra thrusters underneath, 24 extra small ion thrusters that you can turn on. It also has 2 oxygen generators, so you can add hydrogen thrusters underneath if you need an extra boost. That might even theoretically allow you to land on planets if you wanted to add enough thrust, like, and convey everything in. I'm not sure if it would actually work or not, but it might. I don't know. Maybe. Probably not, because it doesn't have much rearward thrust. So, but as I was building, I then decided I didn't want this open. I wanted to be able to add a working hatch. So, a weird thing with the landing gear that locks. So as you see, it's locked into place, and now it'll fly just fine. Well, not here, but in space or on a moon. With the landing gear, even if you have auto lock turned on, for some reason, you tell it to unlock. Auto lock will still be checked, but it won't go back to auto lock. So I had to come up with a system of 2 timers. First timer tells it to unlock and open the door, and then it shuts off the auto lock system and then tells it to run the next timer. The next timer then tells it to turn auto lock back on. So every time you do that, it does it. So then it cycles each time and works perfectly fine. So sometimes it'll go a little twitchy, like it'll get stuck. So you just got to hit the button a couple of times so it pops open. And so that's essentially this. And I may, if I can ever get around to actually building something on the knitted whitelist server, this will definitely be my next ship I build. Because being able to go from Nordic Noodle Base down to New Vegas, I might have to have Mir or Sal build me a platform big enough for this thing. I can actually carry a significant amount of cargo from orbit down to them and vice versa whenever need be. As well as I could literally hold more than every person in the whitelist server in this ship if need be. Now, granted, it doesn't have a jump drive because it's a small ship, but... Oh, last bit. I also added, I believe this is Whiplash's Artificial Horizon script, which is cool because in space, it also has a speedometer on it, tells you your speed. Better look. It tells you your speed, your heading, as well as it'll tell you what direction you are going in space. So kind of like the little star particle effect that goes by, which is handy. I know a lot of people complain about it, but I like it because you can tell where you're going is part of that script. So it's in front of both cockpits. So after I built this, I saw someone's like little space shuttle design, like that looked like a shuttle from what was that show? Star Trek. And I don't think it works. I don't think it breaks Atmo. So I tried this design first. which is very similar. They went with like this long nose shape here, like this slanted nose, as well as like engine pods on either side. And this is, if I had the blueprint, I don't feel like digging it up right now. It looks similar, but not quite the same, and they have 2 seats in the back. Now this one does have a little closing door as well. As you see, it has 6 ion thrusters in the back, the 2 atmospheric, and then 2 hydrogen. So this design has an oxygen generator back here, and can burn hydrogen for a couple of minutes, and will get to about 18,000 kilometers off the planet before this thing will run on just ion and be able to get away. Like, it has to go pretty far, and it's only reactor powered. But it's such a hassle. You have to have ion or hydrogen thrust to be able to get this thing off a planet and into orbit, and it was just such a hassle and very complicated. It took me a couple hours to get it functioning, like probably at least 2 hours. So I thought maybe I could do it with batteries, and I designed this thing in about 20 minutes, and it works beautifully. So this one, as you can see, it's similar. It's got similar nose that aesthetically, way different. Function, way different. So it does also have the 2 seats back here. Now this one does not have an oxygen generator or an oxygen tank. Now the cockpit can hold oxygen on its own. It is conveyed through the connector down there. And then you can also carry oxygen bottles with you. Now this one's a bit tail heavy though. So go ahead and close the door here. So as you see, it kind of leans back. Boop. But this one runs on just the 2 large ion thrusters. So originally I tried to go with... Oh, too high. I gotta gain altitude first for the ion thrusters to gain enough efficiency to actually be able to get going. Let's gain some speed here. So, yeah, once it starts to pick up, you just kind of nose up, and this fucker goes right into orbit. No problems, no hassle, nothing. But it is battery powered, so as you see, it balances between, once we start getting efficient, it'll go to about 22 minutes of flight time, but that's pretty much in orbit. So just to get 2 passengers and a very small amount of cargo to and from a ship, this thing's beautiful. And as you see here, now I'm starting to accelerate. Oh, you guys, I ruined it. I showed the name. Okay, so the big shuttle I named the Salford, and the little shuttle I named the Mir, because it's quite adorable. So I figured with the Salford, it's because, you know, it's Sal that got me building in the whitelist server again, that got me actually playing in it, and her whole purpose, the whole reason she wanted me to build the Noodle base was to get cargo to and from. So now that I built the shuttle for it, I figured I'd name it after. I thought about naming it Salford's Butt. I don't know, maybe the one on the server will actually be named Salford's Butt. But, yeah, I just named it the Salford, and this is the Mir. So, yep, the 5th lifter, the Salford, and the Mir. Now, this thing I think is just fantastic. So it's a little slippery to fly, because the only atmospheric thrusters are down. And neat thing about it is it also has, if you notice, boop, has these 2 ion thrusters that I keep off. It can actually land on a moon as well. So this thing is capable of carrying small amount of cargo, 2 passengers and a pilot, onto an Earth-like planet, or a Luna moon. So even one without atmosphere can land. Yep. And like I said, originally I had a couple ion thrusters, a couple atmospheric thrusters in the back, and I just got so tired of it losing efficiency, and I couldn't break atmo. It would just skip on the top of the atmosphere, and the solution was just a couple of large ion thrusters, because they work well enough at low altitude to be able to actually get this thing to take off. No, stop trying to hit the Loki. So with the Loki, I'm going to update this right after this video, actually. There we go. Alright. So with the Loki, one of my users, I believe it was Tucker, pointed out that I was burning into the my light here. And even that looks a little wonky, like how I kind of have it set back. Yeah, the atmospheric thruster there was burning into it. And so I pulled... Come on, where am I? Let's go. So I pulled it back 1 block. So I will be updating that soon. And next is this little guy here. Now, a long time ago, if you go back to Season 2 of the NID server, I designed a ship called the NID Fire. Let's see. NID Fire. There we go. Okay, so this is the original NID Fire. It's still up on the workshop, too. And the idea was to make... there we go. To make a simple fighter that anybody could fly to help defend the NID, because we had problems with cargo ships. And, you know, it's obviously pre-planet. And this was loosely based on Dracul's Ares design. Now, the problem with this design was these 2 cannons underneath. They could still tear into the nose at times, depending on the maneuvers. So I kept working on it. Eventually came up with the Nidful, which the Nidful was like the next line in design, and this is my like final version of it. So the reason I'm showing it isn't necessarily to show off the Nidful itself, though I did notice it looks a lot like one of Whiplash's ships, and I thought he had actually taken the design from me. Turns out no, he has made it and updated it over a very long period of time. And they're just very similar. Like, the thrust layout, identical on the back. It blows my mind. Like, with these little winglets and stuff, and the quad guns, like, it's ridiculous how similar they are without any interaction between the two of us. We still haven't even spoken. So, alright, so the thing about this is, I can rotate this up, it's all ion powered, and the fucker takes off. It is only 19,000 kilograms. Kind of tilt it a little here. There we go. And off we go. So in theory, you could kind of land this on a planet. But as it goes up, it just gets more and more efficient. And then we'll go directly into space. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've been toying with the last couple of days. So if you guys enjoyed, please hit the like button. I'll see you guys next time.